You could be an employee in your head and be in business. You could be in business thinking like an employee, where you're counting the wrong stuff. Entrepreneurs are building a life where they work 24/7. You've seen a meme that's like, I traded my 9 to 5 for a 24/7 365. Like, I got rid of my job and now I'm totally free. Even on Christmas, I'm sitting there cutting up my Christmas dinner thinking about business and how, like, oh, I can't wait for the holidays to be over so I can get back to work because I have this anxiety, right? The goal in entrepreneurship is to create a life that you don't need to escape from. All right, let's talk about recreating yourself from an employee mentality and an employee way of thinking into an entrepreneur mindset. Most people who I work with who started in business with me, and pretty much everybody for the most part, I would venture to guess, the overwhelming majority of people who are business owners at some point in their lifetime, in most cases, had a job. At some point, they worked for someone else. There are exceptions to everything, but I would say, if I had to take a guess, that the overwhelming majority came from some sort of employment at one point to having an idea of starting a business and transitioned into owning a business and then became a business owner. Maybe even started part-time in their business. And if they made it, then there's a point where they're no longer an employee and they're full-time entrepreneurs. So what does that look like? Why is that mentality change matter so much for people that are transitioning into some sort of entrepreneurship? Because there's a lot of people on this call right now, or not on this call, but listening to this podcast right now, who probably went to college. You know, when I'm training my team and I'm talking about entrepreneurship and business and people starting part-time, a lot of those people, they're full-time professionals. They have degrees. They have multiple degrees. Some of them are doctors, nurses, teachers, law enforcement, military, people from all backgrounds. And a lot of times, the struggle with committing to something full-time is that they have extensive education and they feel like they're stuck. They feel like they have to stay employees because I spent all this money on it. I spent all this time in my education. I spent so much of my life chasing this job and this title. But entrepreneurship is different because entrepreneurship is not about job titles. Entrepreneurship is not about schedules and 9 to 5s and days on and days off. Entrepreneurship is a completely different mentality. So we're going to cover in today's episode number 11, we are going to cover the mentality requirement for you to succeed in business. If you are entering some sort of entrepreneurship, if you have an idea to pursue some sort of a business, what I want you to know is that the way you think ultimately is what's going to determine all your success. It's not usually skill set. You know, so many people have skills that they could take into the world and start a business. And some people try. But what's the difference between someone who makes it and someone who doesn't? Someone who starts and someone who quits. Somebody who starts and is just getting by and someone who starts and is thriving. Well, at the end of the day, especially in my industry, we all have the same license, but one person's making millions, one person's struggling to pay their $2,000 a month bills. Same skill, same license. What's the difference? So much of it is mentality, so much of it. There's a huge percentage of it that's your way of thinking. So let's talk about a couple key points. Number one, entrepreneurs think about business constantly. When I used to work a job, you know, for example, one of my many jobs, I've worked at Olive Garden. I've worked at Pep Boys. I have worked mowing lawns. I have worked at In-N-Out. I've worked for multiple ambulance companies. I worked at Hollister. I've worked at, I mean, so many freaking jobs. And I'll tell you the one thing that they all had in common. I'd get off work, I'd go home, and I wouldn't think about work again until I had to get back to the job. Until I had to get back and clock in. I'd try to clock in early, and I'd try to clock out a little bit early. In fact, I'd try to stop working and then maybe even clock out a little bit later to clock in a couple extra minutes, right? Which makes zero difference on my paycheck. But when I was an employee, I was only thinking about work when I was on the clock. And half the time on the clock, I wasn't even thinking about work. If you were at all like me, where you weren't the greatest employee, I mean, I'd spend a lot of minutes in the restroom, on my phone. I'd spend a lot of minutes in the break room, pretending like I was doing something else. I didn't enjoy work. I didn't enjoy clocking in and clocking out. Entrepreneurs think about business all day long. Entrepreneurs, when they're eating breakfast, they're thinking about business. When they're taking a shower, they're mapping out their next move. When they're eating dinner, they're masterminding and discussing what they could do to launch the next big, vertical growth in their business. When they're talking to their spouse, they're thinking about, hey, what are we going to, on the weekend or planning for next week? Like, entrepreneurs think about business constantly. It's a continuous mindset. And that truly differentiates between people that are very much so invested in building something long-term of their own versus people who like the idea of having a business. Because there's a difference between an entrepreneur and a wantrepreneur. There's a difference between a true business owner who's on a mission to build something huge and someone who's just kind of trying it out. Now, I'm not saying a difference in hours. There probably is. I'm saying there's just a difference in thinking. Someone who's all in. When I started in business, April 2011, I sat down in an office. I walked into something that I had no experience in, and I didn't even know what to expect. I was underqualified, underage, undereducated, just underexperienced, under everything. Like, I didn't belong there. But when I walked in and I sat down afterwards and someone said, hey, here's some money. Your dad's got the money here for you to get your license, for you to learn this industry. And I signed that application that day. Never once has it crossed my mind to ever quit. Never once. On the best month in the beginning, I was fired up. On the worst month, when I had chargebacks, clients canceling, teammates quitting, appointments no-showing, I would drive an hour and a half to an appointment from, LA County or San Gabriel Valley all the way to Playa Vista to meet a client at this restaurant, and they would no-show. No-show. They wouldn't even tell me. They could have saved me an hour and a half drive in traffic. They wouldn't tell me. They just no-show. And then I'd sit there, and even at my most frustrated point where I'm like, wow, this person really no-showed on me after I drove all the way out here? What a jerk. Guess what? Never thought about quitting. Instead, my mentality was, well, I'm here. I might as well sit down, grab some lunch. And what did I do as an entrepreneur? I grab my pen and paper and I start mapping out my next move. I try to prospect somebody there in the restaurant, make a new friend there in the restaurant to make my trip worth it. If I'm going to swipe my card somewhere, I'm going to find a way to make money. Well, that's the difference. An entrepreneur thinks beyond the clock, right? Beyond the clock in, clock out. It's a 24/7 mentality. It's a 24/7 obsession. And constant commitment and habit of thinking about how could I get to the next level. Or an employee doesn't think like that. An employee gets to work, clocks in, does the bare minimum in a lot of cases. Not everybody. There's exceptions. Some of you guys are great employees. And then you clock out and you don't think about it. You don't necessarily take work home. Some do. Teachers take work home. There's a lot of careers that do. But they don't necessarily want to, but they do because it's necessary. But an entrepreneur works everywhere they go. Business is in their mind constantly. Next point I want to talk about. Entrepreneurs don't get paid for time. So where's the mindset shift between, hey, you know what? I might think like an employee in a lot of ways. Well, an employee, what is an employee thinking? An employee is thinking, clock in, on the clock, boom, clock in my 8, 9, 10 hours. If I do that every single week, it's going to pay me this amount of money per month. Entrepreneurs don't think like that. I never once, when I'm mapping out a business plan as a business owner, nowhere in the business plan is working hours. Nowhere. Nowhere in the business plan is if I put 40 hours this week into prospecting, like nowhere is hours. Why? Because entrepreneurs and business owners get paid for value and results, not hours. Employees are compensated on what? Hours and salary. Entrepreneurs are paid for what? Results and the value that they bring to their community, the value that they bring to their clients, the value that they bring to the people walking in their store or their coffee shop, the value that they bring to their real estate client who's getting a loan from them. That's where payment comes from. Nowhere in an entrepreneur's business plan is clock in, clock out, clock in, clock out. That's what the employees that they hire do, but an entrepreneur doesn't think like that. Okay, so where's the shift of thinking? If I'm here right now and I'm thinking about building a business, then I have to start looking at my time as an investment in my growth. Where I'm carving out time to invest into my future because I'm building something, right? I'm not just logging in hours. Entrepreneurs know they don't get paid to clock in. They get paid to create value. They get paid to solve problems. And they get paid a lot of money to what? Create systems that automate business so that problems are solved and value is added without all your time. I was just on the phone with a good buddy of mine who I met recently, and we were talking about he's in the mortgage world. This conversation just today on the way here. He's in the mortgage world. He's talking about, hey, how can I build a brand? How can I get my business out there past? I've got 2,000 clients, but how could I scale it? How could I make it bigger? How could I lock in on building a brand that goes past my current circle? And one of the things I told him is I said, if you have the right team around you, you could do anything. He said, I'm thinking about a podcast. I said, dude, I could never do my podcast without my producer. Never. I don't have the skill set that he has. But if you have the right team around you, you could get anything done. And it's about what? It's about getting a lot done without all the time. How can I service more clients and fit that into my current schedule? How could I service or recruit more agents and fit that into my current schedule? How could I read more books and fit it into my current schedule? I was speaking at an event in Canada and a guy said, Jay, how do you read 50 books a year? I said, well, you build it into your schedule. Half of them are done on audio when you're brushing your teeth in the morning, when you're getting ready, when you're driving in the car, when you're getting ready at night, when you're working out at the gym. The other half, you carve time, read 10, 15 pages every night before you go to bed. See, an entrepreneur thinks we all have the same 24 hours in a day, but how can I get the most value out of that 24 hours? Because value is what pays me, not hours. All right, let's talk about another one. Entrepreneurs have what? Relentlessness. The ability to push through until the job is done. Whether it's late at night, whether it's over the weekend, whether it's on a holiday, it doesn't matter. An entrepreneur is going to what? Finish the job. Okay, they're going to finish the job. They understand that incomplete steps, incomplete systems, incomplete jobs directly impact their success. So they're going to get the job done no matter what. Where an employee might what? Clock out at 5 o'clock and leave the project for the next day. Clock out at 5 o'clock on Friday and go, yeah, I'll get to it on Monday. But an entrepreneur doesn't work like that. They drive results and keep momentum going. Again, why? Because they're not paying attention to the clock. Okay, the difference maker is what? Success comes from people who are willing to work beyond normal, conventional limits. Those are the people who see the most success, especially in business, where we're not. When I'm trying to build a business, when Ronnie and I are mapping out an event, or we're mapping out a business plan, or we're mapping out a change in our system, or we're thinking how can we upgrade maybe our training schedule, whatever it is, we're not thinking about typical just working hours. We just know we have 24 hours in a day, and how can we get the most out of those 24 hours? Because in business, you're working from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed. And sometimes I go, oh man, the simple life. The simple life sometimes looks attractive, but that sometimes is very rarely. And it's only when you're probably the most frustrated and the most overwhelmed. But entrepreneurs don't stop until the job's done. It's a grind now to give you freedom for the rest of your life. The complete freedom to do whatever you want to do for the rest of your life. Yesterday, I'm on the phone with one of my agents. And she says, man, it's just the calling my people thing that I'm so bad at. I'm so bad at it. I'm like, why don't you just work? Why don't you just do it? Why do I have to call you? And I said, hey, listen, you know, that's what I do all day long. That's all I do. All I do is call my agents, call my advisors, and some of them I know I got to call them, fire them up, sell them the dream, remind them why they're great, and what? My goal is just to get them excited for the next 24 hours because I'm going to have to do it again tomorrow. And I said, if the hardest part of my job is that all day long, I got to be thinking about my team, thinking about my agents, thinking about my advisors, calling them and getting them excited to not quit for the next 24 hours until something pops for them. Guess what? Life is pretty freaking good. Life is good. So success comes in business to the people that aren't counting minutes, counting hours, I've been working here. Oh my God, I've been coming to meetings for 6 months. That's 2 meetings a week for 2 hours a week. So that's 2 hours per meeting. So that's 4 times in 6 months. That's 24. So I've shown up to like over 150 hours worth of meetings, and I'm still broke. Okay, that's an employee way of thinking. Here's what I want you to know. You could be an employee in your head and be in business. That's the whole point of this episode. You could be in business thinking like an employee, where you're counting the wrong stuff. You're tracking the wrong. I've sent out this many messages and nobody replied. Now there's a difference between I've sent out this many messages, nobody replied, I must be doing something wrong. I had that conversation yesterday too. But the other person who just wants to whine about it, oh my gosh, coach, I've been doing this for 6 months. I had someone, we have our end of the year event. And someone's telling me like, yeah, so-and-so on my team, they don't want to come because they said they came last year. And, so I just fill in the blanks. Like they haven't done anything in the last 12 months, right? So I said, so this person has the mentality of, well, I went to the gym last year and then when I left, I was still out of shape. So, I'm not going to go back. That's the thinking, right? And she said, no, well, you want to know what that is, you guys? I'll ask you, is that entrepreneur thinking or employee thinking? That's 100% employee thinking. And that's the whole point of this episode. Okay. Next point I wrote down. Entrepreneur thinking is about creating a life, not escaping from life. Now let's talk about the difference. Entrepreneurs are building a life where they work 24/7. You've seen a meme that's like, I traded my 9 to 5 for a 24/7, 365, right? Like I got rid of my job and now I'm totally free, but now I got to work all day, every day of the year, right? No holidays off. Like even on Christmas, I'm sitting there cutting up my Christmas dinner, thinking about business and how I can't wait for the holidays to be over so I could get back to work because I have this anxiety, right? Which we talked about in another episode on entrepreneurs, paranoia, and anxiety, right? Entrepreneurship is about creating a life, not running from life, not escaping from life, living beyond vacations. Entrepreneurs don't live for the weekends. We work on the weekends. We don't grind Monday through Friday to celebrate the weekends. We coast Monday through Friday, and you could get more done on the weekend than you do the entire week. The goal in entrepreneurship, so you could get the mentality right, is to create a life that you don't need to escape from. Is to create a life that you don't have to vacate, right? Which is what vacation is. Is to create a life where going on a trip somewhere is normal. It's not a vacation. It's part of life. That's entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is about creating a life of purpose and autonomy, meaning that it's yours and only yours, and you can do whatever you want with it. And a life of fulfillment, a life that brings you joy. That's what entrepreneurship is about. Now, for employees, they don't think like that necessarily. Because they're like, oh my God, that's where thank God it's Friday, TGI Friday. That's where it came from. Because if you work a normal 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, you're like, oh, I'm done. And holy smokes, Monday's Memorial Day, I get 3 days off, right? 3-day weekend. That's an entrepreneur, like the complete opposite of what, like for me, the holidays, I'm like, I work on a holiday. Oh, today's a holiday. What holiday is it? I didn't even know. Every day's a holiday. That's the goal, is to create a life where every day is a holiday, where they all feel the same because every day is free. Every day you have autonomy to do whatever you want, whether it's a Christmas. In fact, on Christmas, I'm more restricted to a schedule of places I have to be than I am on a normal Tuesday. So the goal is to create, as an entrepreneur, is to create a life there where you constantly have passion and excitement and enthusiasm, where you're chasing a vision of this is what my ideal life would be like. And then when you have that vision in your mind, every day you'll grind. That's why you don't count hours. That's why you don't clock in, clock out. It's because you're excited because, man, what could life be like in 5 years? What could life be like in 10 years? I want to build a lifestyle where I enjoy and look forward to life every single day. That's entrepreneurship. Okay, let's talk about another one. The ability to constantly grow and constantly learn. I would challenge you to just maybe do a little homework. Ask your friends, because I didn't used to do this before I was in business. How many of your friends read books? Self-improvement books, some sort of self-development books, some sort of business books, some sort of educational books. Entrepreneurship, the mentality behind a successful entrepreneur is constant improvement and adaptability, which is where we change with the times and we can adjust. We're not stuck. Constant improvement, always learning, always adjusting. Now, when I was an employee, I didn't think like that because first of all, growing up, I felt like reading was, I was just talking to Ronnie about this the other day. I felt like reading was not a punishment, but it was homework. So it was something you had to do. It was something you were being forced to do. And so I never grew to enjoy reading until I got in business. And I started reading and realizing, you know what, the more I read, the more I grow, the more I grow, the more money I seem to make. And like, this is a good little pattern. Like this works. So then I started reading. And then for maybe 6 to 8 years in business in the beginning, all I read was self-development. Because I felt like if I was reading anything else, I was wasting time. And then about 3 years ago, I talked to Ronnie. I was like, I feel like every self-development book at this point says pretty much the same thing. Like, I feel like I've read them all. It's very rarely I pick one up. Like The Mountain Is You is a self-development book that I picked up in the beginning of this year that it was actually like fresh, new information, and I really enjoyed it. I was surprised. I was like, this is good. This is stuff that I haven't read in another book. But then I started reading, fiction and just like reading for fun. And now it's probably 50-50. I'll read like 52 books this year, and probably half are self-improvement, half are fiction, and just for fun. But entrepreneurs always have a growth mentality, a continuing to get better mentality, a fighting for the next little bit of improvement, the next little bit of self-improvement, like fighting to become better by 1 inch, 1% every single day. That's an entrepreneur's way of thinking. In growing, adapting, being more creative, finding ways to market your business better, finding ways to connect with more people, finding ways to build a bigger audience, finding ways to land more clients, finding ways to innovate and upgrade your systems. Like, all these things are areas of self-improvement where you look at every day as an opportunity to grow. Every day is an opportunity to improve. When you fail, it's not failure. It's an area where you could get feedback and change and adjust and get better. That's not how an employee necessarily thinks. You want to know what an employee does? They come in business, it gets hard, and then they go, I don't know if this is for me. That's an employee's thinking. They come in business, they get canceled on a couple appointments, and they go, yeah, I don't know if this is for me. They come in business, they try, it doesn't work. They try again, it doesn't work. They ask for feedback, they try again, it doesn't work, and then they quit. That's an employee's way of thinking because they don't have a adaptability, constant improvement, constant adjust. Oh, it's not that it's not for me. It's that I'm not doing it right. There's somewhere I got to get better. There's something I got to master and improve on. And an entrepreneur is always thinking about, how could I get better? In fact, in business, the thing that you did maybe 5 years ago doesn't work at all today because the world changes, and that's where adaptability comes in. That's why Blockbuster's not here anymore, is because as things change, if you don't adjust, you end up out of business. And so entrepreneurship is all about getting better. Another thing entrepreneurship is all about is marketing. Marketing. Now, I want to cover this one real quick because this is really important. Marketing is shifting the way shifting how you present yourself. That's what marketing is in this instance. And I want to talk about the main place where, as an entrepreneur, if you are looking to be successful in business part-time, then this is the main place you got to start on how you self-market and present yourself. And that's inside of your inner circle. That's with your friends and family. there's a high level of importance in how you self-market to friends and family and people that you're close to, especially because you need to create and build credibility. So entrepreneurs see their brand as something that's always evolving. When I first got in business, I was 21 years old, and I was known at church as being a 21-year-old troublemaker because everyone at church knew me from growing up in church since I was 2. And so I didn't have credibility. I had a bunch of people that cared about me, but I didn't have a bunch of people that were lining up to become my client. I didn't have a bunch of people that were lining up to join me in business. So how you market yourself to your friends and family is so important. And it's a different way of thinking. As an employee, you don't even think about it unless you're trying to become an influencer, or you're trying to start a podcast or write a book or do something else. And if you're doing those things, then you probably have an entrepreneur's mentality already. How do you market yourself, though, if this is never something you've paid attention to? Well, I'll tell you, you got to start to look like and become whatever it is you're trying to look like and become. So in my industry, I'm in finance. So in finance, you want to know what that means? You got to look like money because you work with money. And so the very first thing I did is I started showing up to family holidays in a suit. I started showing up to church in a suit. I was going to church every Sunday. I went from skinny jeans, some Vans, and a band t-shirt or a sports t-shirt to showing up in a suit like that overnight. You know, as soon as I could get a couple bucks to go down to the local Burlington coat factory where I could get a Calvin Klein suit for $100, I started showing up in a suit and tie. I started brushing my hair like a business person. I started to grow out a little bit of a beard because I was self-conscious that I was too young and I looked young. You know, I started carrying a briefcase or some sort of a business bag. This is real stuff. So I could start to slowly shift the way the people that know me and have known me forever look at me. Now, if I only put a suit and tie on when I'm running an appointment, what does that tell you? I'm not an entrepreneur in my thinking. I'm an employee. I'm like, oh, I have an appointment, put on a suit. All right, I put on a suit, show up to my appointment, then I take my suit off, and then I go to the family barbecue looking like I just came from the gym. Well, let me ask you something. Do you want your friends and family to look at you as a business person? Do you want to build credibility? Do you want them to see you as someone who's successful? You have to look successful long before you're successful in order to ever become successful. That's part of the job. That's part of it. You can always tell. Every industry has their thing. Someone who's an influencer, someone who's a content creator, they always got to look to them. They always got to look. Someone who's a youth pastor in a mega church, dude, they got youth pastor written all over them. You know it. There are these groups in these industries where you start thinking about them. Someone who's a nurse, man, you know a nurse when you see a nurse. You could just tell. You could tell. In your industry, what do the most successful people look like? What's the expectation? It's matching expectations. If I'm in finance, what does finance look like? Finance looks like money. If I'm in real estate, what does real estate look like? If I'm in tech, if I'm a musician or an aspiring musician, if I'm a content creator, what does it look like? There is a brand that is associated with your industry, and you want to look like the best part of that brand. Whatever it is that you don't like, that's not good, leave that out and look like the best part of your brand. Okay? This is a big, big, big deal. Especially when it comes to your friends and family, because that's where credibility starts, and you want to win those people over. And you may have no credibility in the beginning, and you got to win that credibility, which means maybe I don't have the resume to go with it, but I'm going to start showing up looking the part. Just like at the golf course. You know, if you can't hit the ball straight, at least show up looking like you could hit the ball straight. Where everyone thinks you hit the ball straight, you just hope they never actually see you swing the club. But you show up looking good and you look like you belong there. Okay, that's part of the battle. Last key point I want to talk about, just the long-term vision. Okay, long-term vision for an entrepreneur. There's always a long-term end goal, game plan for down the road. Unlike when I was an employee, I worked for a fixed pay. Entrepreneurs build, essentially, if you're building a business, you're building equity in your business. long term. And it's about what could my business look like and be paying me and be worth 5, 10 years down the road. Okay, because in business, if I'm investing time into a person who's a business partner of mine or an agent or an advisor who works with me, what am I doing? I'm building equity and I'm eventually building passive income. The goal is to have a mentality in entrepreneurship of ownership. You know, the fact that someday I could own something, that I'm contributing my time and investing my time into something that's going to be long lasting. It's not short. It's not just a paycheck. It's not just a fixed pay. An employee, you know, no matter how hard you work, you're going to get the same check, unless you're getting commission or whatever. But if you're just hourly or salary, you know, if you do the best job or you do the worst job, you still get the same check. In business, it's so different. In business, it's about building something that's not just a paycheck. I'm building something that's going to compound and roll and roll and roll and roll into tomorrow. Everything I did last week is rolling into tomorrow. All the efforts I put the last 10 years are rolling into next year. All the efforts I put the last 13 years are rolling into the next 25 years. That's the mentality of entrepreneurship. That's why you don't quit. It's about getting momentum. It's about getting momentum on your side where the compound efforts start to grow and add up and compound. It could take you 10 years to make your first 100 grand and 10 months to go from 100,000 to $500,000. Why? Compound efforts. Okay. So as we finish, here's what I would tell you. It's all about small steps. My entire time in business and entrepreneurship has been about small, little, tiny, sometimes big, sometimes a couple steps backwards, but it's small steps forward that compound. If you're not in business, geez, you got to find a way into some sort of business. Whether it's my industry, we're always looking for talent. Whether it's something you're passionate about and you get on Google and you start looking up ideas, you know, entrepreneurship will give you everything, but it requires a shift from what's comfortable and what's routine into something that's long-term and something that could totally just redefine and reshape your life. That's really what it is. When you go from employee to entrepreneur, you're leaving what's comfortable and normal and routine, and you're diving into something that might challenge you, that might require you to step out of your comfort zone, that might make you uncomfortable, that might give you anxiety, that might make you lose sleep, that might make you worry 24/7, but it could redefine and transform your entire life. And I think it's the best decision you can make. Now, we appreciate all the support, all the love, all the shares, all the messages every time we run into you. I ran into someone yesterday who listens to the podcast and listens to the show, and they just said how much they appreciate it. So I appreciate all that stuff. We do our best to put out our best, and as always, we're grateful to our team and our producer who puts in all the work, who really does all the work. All I do is show up, and very, very grateful for him. And we will tag him in all these videos. All right, you guys. Thanks a ton. We'll see you soon.